Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with prolific and legendary jazz percussionist and vibes player, the great Terry Gibbs. Originally from Brooklyn, New York, he would go on to become a legend in the world of jazz. After seeing his hero Benny Goodman rise from the stage at the Parmaount Theater, he would go on to play with him extensively over his career. He has a biography with the details of all of these tales and adventures that he had with Miles Davis, Lenny Bruce, Billie Holliday, Charlie Parker, Tommy Dorsey, Regis Philbin, and so many others. It's a scream. From his home in L.A., we spoke about his book, A Life Well Led in Jazz, and the dexterity of a true human creative force full of humor that will turn 92 years old on October 13th, 2016. So please get to know Terry and dig this interview, my friends.
So everything's recording and it's good to go.
Good, Joe. We got it.
So one thing I do want to say before we do even get into what you were going to say about Benny is that we have two very, I think, important things that we share in common as two men on this planet. First of all, I was born on October 13th of 1972.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
And my dad was full-blooded Italian and grew up in Brooklyn, was born in 1943, and I grew up listening about everything firsthand from the Dodgers to anything that went into the neighborhood mixture of
I take it you grew up out here. Where are you down? Kansas City?
I'm in Kansas City, yes.
That's where you grew up, right?
I grew up here. My dad joined the Air Force and got stationed here. That's why he left New York, and I didn't grow up there. That's,
you know, in my day, when I grew up, my parents came from Russia. Where did your parents, your grandparents come from? You know?
Yeah, my on one side it's Naples, and on the other side it's in Shaka, Sicily.
Yeah. Anyhow, my point is, there used to be an Italian neighborhood and a Jewish neighborhood and an Irish neighborhood. You know, because this is the days when all the immigrants came here, and everybody was afraid of each other, because they got away from the countries they came from, because they were either terrorized by other people or other nationalities, which had nothing to do with the Italians, Jews, and Irish here, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was weird. You never went to another neighborhood unless you wanted to come home with one leg.
I couldn't believe the amount of fights. He was a very peaceful man when he was here, and he talked about his youth in Brooklyn. He was like, you know, it was slam out. You know, if you got in the wrong place, someone gave you the wrong look, something went down, you had to defend your honor.
It was different, but you know, some while those were days when you never even shut the door to your house. You never locked your car. You never locked your car ever. I mean, they were completely different days, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, you know, the one thing that I get from reading your book is that, and I always feel like this from legends, is that you were just in the middle of something because you were a musician. You weren't chartering some new language. It was just something you were doing. You were making music. You were around a bunch of like-minded cats that were doing that. And
well, Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie and Bud Powell, those three I contribute to. They started what you call bebop, and we were just learning it. But some of us, thank God for myself, we got it fast, and we became part of that whole movement ourselves. For example, Milt Jackson and myself were the only two bebop vibe players those days, and so I think other vibe players may have picked some things up from both of us. Well, I hope, you know, in some way.
Absolutely. You know, of all the beautiful things that Charlie Parker has brought to this world with his music, you, I think, most eloquently put his character and his prowess on stage and light. When you talked about taking him up to 125th Street, he kept nodding out, and you finally told him, get out of the cab. I know you're a god on stage.
When I said get out of my car, he was burning up the, you know, those days, what it would be like, those days I bought a new Oldsmobile that had a padded hood. They weren't making padded hoods, and it was brand new. And Charlie Parker was like the genius of all times, where you were doing anything for him because he was that good. And we, you know, the music was so important to us. But to me, Charlie Parker on stage was the genius of all time. When he was off stage, he was my friend, or he was just another guy, and if he did something I didn't like, I'd tell him. It didn't bother me. It had nothing to do with Charlie Parker, the genius saxophone player.
Absolutely. Well, that was a great story.
I threw him out of my car.
Yeah, I love it. I totally love that. The one thing that I am always amazed at with Steve Allen, with your relationship and just knowing him. His music is beautiful. He was such a great entertainer. I mean, his head had to be going in 1,000 different directions all the time. What was it like?
You just brought me something, Joe. Let me give you up. Every time you say something, it brings up a story.
Sure, go ahead.
I'll tell you what he once did. You said his head was going in all different directions, right?
Yeah.
He could do 10 things at one time. One time we were going, Steve Allen couldn't read music or write music. So at those days, today you have these little tape recorders where you can talk into them, But those days they didn't have that. So what he would do, if he wrote a song, he could play it on a piano. If he put it on a piece of paper, he put the letter B that goes down to D, then to E up there, and they'd have some guy come over and sort of transcribe what he would look at the words, the letters, and Steve would tell him this, he would tell him what to do. So one time we were going to Las Vegas. I was back getting all the music ready, and I would take this up to Steve, and here's what was going on. Here was the scene. I'd go up to Steve, you want to use it? Yeah, let's use this. And then as I walked away, he said to the piano player, make that an A flat. And at the meantime, at the same time, he was writing he had his secretary there. He was writing a dictating letter to write to Vice President Humphreys. All at once, like 4 bars each.
Wow.
Boom, boom, boom. This is for you, Terry. This is for you, and this is for Vice President Humphreys. He was doing all that at one time.
Amazing. Yeah, he was an amazing sort of person.
You know what? He was not a comic. He was a wit.
I was going to say, I love what you wrote about him in the book. It really opened up a whole new portal to understanding Steve Allen. So,
I understand. He was my friend before I ever worked. He was also not a friend. He was a fan of mine, then became my friend, and then I worked for him. But he was still my friend. I really honestly miss him. His office is only about 6-7 blocks from my house, and I used to go over there and just hang out with him. He loved when I would tell him jokes because he couldn't tell a joke. That wasn't his bag. It had to come off the top of his head. He was the greatest ad-lib. He and Johnny Carson were the 2 greatest nighttime hosts there ever have been in this whole business.
Absolutely.
Because you know what it was? They were very funny, but their job was to get the best, if you're a guest, is to get the best out of you. They would feed you the thing. They would set you up so that you could be, if you were a comic, they'd set you up so you could do this. By the way, both of those guys could interview a derelict in the street and a scientist who just invented a way to get all of us to the moon. They could interview, but they were both intelligent guys.
The thing that always oozed out from them is they have charm. They could charm anybody and they could get it out. That's just how they did it.
That's because, once again, it wasn't contrived. They weren't saying something they said before. They may have said it, but not the same place. They were like jazz musicians, really.
Yeah, which is why it makes sense that Steve was so good as a jazz musician.
I'll tell you what I have. I have a bunch of videos that from the TV shows we did.
Yeah.
And one time we did a show. We did 6 shows with 3 of the greatest comedians sitting with Steve. No script, no nothing, just like a jam session with 4 guys,
Yeah.
One show had Sid Caesar and Shecky Green, if you know those people, and Billy Crystal, and Milton Berle, and Carl Reiner, and you name the biggest names in show business those days who were funny. These were funny people. And Steve would play the moderator, but he was throwing a line here. He couldn't help but throwing a line here and there when there was an opening,
Well, it's funny, the vignettes you had of Lenny Bruce in there, too. Like the one time he ran out of the club when he cussed, and those guys ran out.
You know what? I love when I wrote that book, you got to understand, when I was on the Woody Herman band, which probably was, at that time, was the greatest band in the world, and I was on the Buddy Rich band. Those bands, let me see, there would be 15, 16 guys in each band, had about 10 junkies, 12 junkies, 3 alcoholics. Unfortunately, indirectly, I think Charlie Parker could have been the reason why a lot of guys made dope. Because, we don't know where he came from. But he was so good. You have to understand, Joe, today you hear it and it sounds great, but hearing it then in 1945 or 44, you didn't believe what you were hearing because you never heard it anywhere. You never heard that. So indirectly, I think because he was a junkie, Charlie Parker was a junkie, all these young kids thought that maybe that's what's doing it. Maybe because he's making heroin and morphine, whatever it is. And so they'll be that good too. But there's no way you can shoot up the whole room full of morphine and it won't get you anywhere.
Yeah.
And you're living in the city where Bird came from.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I just saw actually a Candido who's 95 was here this weekend playing and talking about one of the last times he was here was gigging with Bird, and we were on 18 and Vine. And every time I'm down
he worked for me for a long time.
Yeah, he was the happiest guy in that room, man. He was a
great. Well, he came to the job every night. The band I had with Candido had Billy Taylor on piano and a guy called George Vivier on bass and Charlie Smith on drums. Charlie Smith is the drummer. The only video there is of Charlie Parker playing, you know, that one video of Bird playing with Dizzy and you don't know the other guys. Sandy, I forget his last name, bass player. Yeah. And Charlie Parker playing, but Charlie Smith was playing drums on it. He was such a wonderful guy.
Yeah, that's all I got from him when he was playing, and he loves what he does. He just absolutely loves it.
Is he 95 now?
95, yes.
Well, you know what? He plays Latin music, but I think that I am the oldest bebop musician living.
Wow.
Bebop, I'm talking about music. The music bebop, you know? The next oldest to me could be Roy Haynes. He's about 6 months younger than I am.
So let me ask you a question. When you were in the midst of this and you were in the middle of bebop, did you know what you were doing or were you guys just playing?
I was very happy to be just working and playing. Just playing. When I first came out of the Army, about sometime in 1945, first of all, I came home, if you read my book, I came home from furlough. My best friend took me to hear Charlie Parker. That was about 1941 or 2, whatever it was. I Dizzy Gillespie and Bud Powell and Max Roach. I didn't believe, and Curly Russell. I didn't know what they were doing. You know, I gave up. I'm a drummer. I'm a percussion player. I play all the percussionists. I had a scholarship to Juilliard as a timpanist with the symphony, but I turned that down because I wanted to play jazz. But I was playing drums and vibes, but I quit playing vibes because I had all this technique, and my idols at that time were Roy Eldridge and Lester Young, and they played just so great but simple. And I didn't know what the technique I had, so it was very frustrating. So I just stayed with the drums. I went on the road with big bands. But then when I came home on furlough, my best friend Tiny Khan took me to him. He says, "You're not going to believe it, Bird and Diz." I honestly, like I wrote in the book, I had a little nervous breakdown. I didn't believe what they were doing. My whole head exploded. Yeah. I didn't know what they were doing. All I knew is they were playing a million notes. And I didn't know what the notes were, but I knew. I actually learned at the beginning. I learned more from Dizzy Gillespie because Dizzy, his syncopation was almost like a drummer. If I just played, just sang you the rhythmic like that would be like a drummer. But Dizzy would go anybody play notes with it. See. Yeah. Where Bird played, everything Bird played was like what George Gershwin wrote. Everything he played was a song. So it wasn't easy to learn that. You had to become a composer to learn to play like Bird. But from Dizzy, I got that. And I was in the Army band. And so when I went back and we used to have, there were about 6 of us. We used to make Army movie pictures and bond drives, and broadcast. And we had a lot about 30 violin players, so all the guys were kind of, and not in no camp, right? Barracks right in the middle of Dallas, Texas, because we had to broadcast and do all this work, and all the guys would do nothing but lay around the barracks, and about 6 of us who loved jazz would just jam all the time. So after I came back from furlough, after hearing Bird and Diz, and I started jamming with the guys, and then I said I'd play some vibe, they thought I was crazy. Yeah. I was playing all these notes, but let me tell you, I still didn't know what Bird was doing. The first note was always right, and the last note was always right. In the middle was probably the worst thing. I probably sound like I was probably the first avant-garde player ever.
Wow.
It was out there. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the one thing about the Army that I find interesting, too, is you had a talent for putting on the helmet and chanting and it would rain. Was that...
That's a long story. We'll say that. Save that for the next one.
It's great, though. I got that.
You know, I'm a blessed human being because I love to laugh, Joe. I love to laugh. The 17, 16, 17 years I spent with Steve Allen was like a blessing with all the great talent that went, you know, besides all the great comedians that were on the show, Steve loving jazz. We had Dizzy and we had Count Basie. I mean, we had Bert, you name it. You name it. We had all these, not Bert, he wasn't around, but we had all these great people on the shows all the time, all these great jazz musicians.
Yeah, well, you know, in the beginning, the thing that gets me that I love about your life is the dream realized. You see Benny Goodman at the Paramount come out of the ground, big, huge thrill. Then you become friends with him. And then, you know, all of that contrasts with you going to his door to get money. He's playing his clarinet, practicing naked. It's like I had all
naked, yes.
It's like...
Yes, well, Benny was left field. You know, how I always put the thing to somebody who didn't know how out there Benny was. I said, if say you tell somebody that you're going to tell them a story about somebody with a pair of black shoes, and then somebody tells it to somebody else, and somebody, you know, stories go around, by the time after the 20th person hears the story, it comes back to you about this guy with the yellow hair and green tie on, which had nothing to do with the beginning of the story. When I used to hear stories about Benny Goodman, that's what it sounded like. The most far-fetched, dumb stories. But when I joined him and played with him, every story I ever heard about him had to be true. He was out there. He would get the buttons fly. He called everybody Pops, including his wife. He couldn't remember anybody's name. But he could play I'll tell you the one thing, he could play the clarinet.
Yeah.
He could swing you off the stage. He really was great.
Yeah.
And he loved me, which was, my last name is Gabenko. He loved my last name, so he called me Gabenko. Until I asked for a raise, then I was Pops.
Beautiful. So when you were growing up, what did your dad teach you about music?
Actually, he didn't teach me anything. My father was much older than me, just like I am my son, Jerry, but we're closer. Coming from another country, my father was a band leader who played weddings and bar mitzvahs and things like that. He was fairly successful at. He just taught me. Actually, my father, I think he's my biggest influence in life. He taught me to be a nice person.
Beautiful.
My father was probably the nicest man I ever met in my life.
Beautiful. So the one thing, too, that stuck out in this book from the early years was that trip to Sweden. I was laughing the whole time. You guys were like a bunch of kids in a candy store.
We didn't even know what you know, the money they gave us looked like cigars. You know, there used to be a cigarette called Raleigh, I think it was called, that used to have coupons on the back, you know? You get enough coupons and you get a pack of cigarettes or something like that. And the money in Sweden they gave us looked like those cigar store coupons. We didn't know what they were worth. and the first thing we did when we got off we had a Chubby Jackson was waiting there for us. We arrived in Copenhagen and we had to drive to Sweden, which is not far. We had this driver, and after he took us there, we all gave him a tip. We all chipped in to give him a tip. And for example, you got the cab now, and it came to 85 cents. We gave him a $30 tip. We didn't know what the money was. It looked like cigar store coupons. So we just kept giving him more. He said, nay. And he was honest. He kept saying, no. We said, yeah, take it.
That's great.
It wasn't like money to us.
Right, yeah.
You know what was great? It's probably still here today, but I think it's more of a business. And it was a business then, but when we were young, all we wanted to do was play. We wanted to play. If we weren't working, which we didn't hardly ever work when we first started, if there was a jam session, 84 miles away, we would drive to the jam session, take buses, anything just to go play something.
The one thing, another relationship that was very seminal in your life is Buddy Rich, and the story of you guys in the desert, when you guys were driving and you were puffing on the happy stuff and you were getting him loose and you would give him advice. When he finally dropped you off, Did he talk to you after that and say, "I'm sorry"? Was there any?
No, I'm sorry, but I was, Buddy and I were going to fight each other. I used to box as a young kid, and he thought he could fight. In fact, he studied boxing with a guy called Johnny Bratton, who was like fought for the lightweight championship. And so, but I was a real boxer, and he was loved me. But we used to fight all the time. We never got into we were going to get into a fist fight. But one time, he used to yell at the band all the time. So now he's going to make me a star. You want me to tell the story?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, well, everybody was smoking pot those days, no big deal. And Buddy wasn't smoking any pot. He used to yell at the guys, but they weren't on pot. They were on heroin. But he thought he didn't even know what they were on. They just fall asleep on stage. And he used to yell at. We had some good players, guys like, Johnny, the name Johnny Mandel.
Yeah. Who
wrote The Shadow of Your Smile and all those songs, Emily,
Yeah.
Well, he was playing bass trumpet in the band, and he played so, but he never let him play. So I get him in the car. He's going to take me in his Cadillac. By the way, we had a bus because there was no money being made. We had a bus that used to go about 15 miles an hour. It was like what you see in a cartoon, this crackle, 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 And so, but he's going to take me in his Cadillac, and we get in his Cadillac and we're driving, and I said, "You want to get high?" And he says, "No, I'm not sure." So I got him stoned a little bit. We had a few pokes on some pot, and he got a little mellow. And I said, "Something, buddy, all the guys in the band, they think they're as good as the Woody Herman band, and they want to play. Why don't you give them some energy, So that night he comes in, he says, "Hey guys, come on, let's have some fun and play." And they didn't believe it. So that next day we get in a car again. And I said, everybody loves like Johnny Mandel plays, but you never let him play. Really? Next day he's pointing to Johnny for solos all over the place. For about 4 days, I'm really telling him what they all is. I'm just telling him what he is. I'm really giving it to him. And about after the 4th day, we're driving through the desert, in Arizona desert, where it's 4 o'clock in the morning. By the way, I happen to be afraid of a snake more than anything. And in the desert, it's pitch dark in the area, and in the desert, 4 o'clock in the morning. You can't see anything. And so I start telling him, I start telling him once again what an idiot he is, how bad he is. And he stops the car. He says, "Hey, I don't want to hear any more of this baloney. Get out of my car." Boom. And he stole the other car. I saw him putting me on playing game. And he 90 miles an hour, 100 miles, he ran away. And I thought I'd be back in 5 minutes. And it's pitch black, and when the wind blows, they roll around, make a hedges,
Oh yeah, the tumblers, yeah. No, I know.
Yeah, they tumble. They were flying on me all over me. I thought it was snakes. I was like a nervous idiot jumping up and down in a desert. He never came back. Luckily, that bus was on the same highway. I waited about 2-3 hours for that bus to get there. When I got to where we went. Finally, when we got to the job, I wanted to kill him.
Yeah. But
when he'd play a drum solo, and you'd forget about anything else he ever did, because it's not a drummer living today. We'll never have another drummer like him, just like we won't have another Charlie Parker.
Yeah, I totally believe that. One of the big things, too, of all the comedy that was in your bio, the one thing that seemed quite very serious was that accident in King City. Talk to me about that.
It was just a weird thing. I drove all the time. We had 2 cars. Frank DeVito, the drummer, had his own car, and he would always take the bass player Herman Wright with him. And I had this little girl, Terry Pollard, who always drove with me. Now, we were working opposite Dave Brubeck, who was just getting well known. This is 1955. We would had to finish there and go to Las Vegas, where we were going to open up at a hotel there. I had a cold, and I always drove, whether it be from driving from New York to California. I did all the driving, everywhere. I could drive, in those days, like 20 hours in a row. As like young, you got all that energy, and you can hardly wait to get the next job and have fun. And I just had a bad cold, and we're going through these mountains, and we had to go to L.A. first. We had to go to L.A. first and go right there to go to Las Vegas. And so I didn't feel good. I just was that bad, and I had to take Herman right out of the other car because Terry didn't drive, and let him drive my car, and I drove with him, and Herman didn't have any experience, and just stepped on the brake too fast, and the car went sideways, and they hit the car with me in it, and I thought I'd never play again. My right arm was paralyzed, and it was just a strange period of my life, but you learn something from everything, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing, there's little vignettes of you running into people, and the one thing that was very memorable in here was that kiss that Billie Holiday planted on you.
Oh, I was a baby. I was a Woody man. I must have been, I was about 22, 23, 24. Let me see, I was 24 years old.
Yeah.
And Billie Holiday, that was Lady Day. She was probably, in jazz, maybe the most famous name. She was, you know, by the musicians, considered the greatest singer of all time and everything, you know. And we were working at a place here in California with Woody's band, and she was working right down the street. And she used to get done about 1 o'clock. We used to get done about 3, so she always come for the last show every night. And when she walked in the club with that mean coat, they were like, Lady Day, Lady Day, Lady Day. And she comes to the club one time, and we finished playing this one song, and about Woody about ready to make an announcement. He said, hey, Woody, let that boy play something for me. And she's pointing to me. Hey, boy, Can't Get Started With You. I never played it before, I don't think, but I played it. I played Can't Get Started With You. And she says, come here. And, you know, this is like, club is packed. So she says, come here. So I come down there, and she bends me over. You know how you bend somebody over like it. Then she gives me a kiss in front of the whole place. Whoa! I don't think I washed my lips for 2 years, but it was something that was so embarrassing. You know, this Lady Day kissed me. Wow! I was talking about every place we went. I would tell that story.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. The other story I love is when you hooked up with Miles, and he said, "Why don't you have any black folk?" And you said, "Why don't you have any Jewish folk?"
We used to put each other on. To start with, you know how Miles talk. He had that kind of voice.
Yeah.
When I had my big band, the Dream Band, I used to stand in front of the band. If you have any of those Dream Band albums, everybody's screaming, having fun, and I used to yell all the time, and my voice got like this, you know. So we went on a tour one time. And with the Dream Band, my big band, and it's the band that Miles had with Cannonball Adderley and John Coltrane, Paul Chambers on bass. Miles and I, we both came up at the same time, and we were very close. We could say anything to each other. In those days, so Miles says to me, "Hey, Terry, how come you got no niggas in the band?" I said, "Hey, Miles, how come you got no Jews in your band?" And he broke up.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. You know, the other thing that's cool, too, is that you really kind of got to see the beginnings of that love that Alice and John Coltrane had for each other. How cool was that to have that relationship and a residual relationship with Alice all the way up till today?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, one of the things is there's nothing... First of all, Alice was the most ladylike person I ever had in my band or worked with. I mean, she was a lady. And to be honest, Alice, it's so hard to say these things. She wasn't really pretty outwardly. I mean, really that pretty. She had like little marks on her face. But inwardly, she was such a beautiful person that she looked like Lana Turner or Marilyn Monroe, just as pretty as them, you know? Yeah. And one of the things, but at Birdland, we worked opposite John Coltrane, and this is the days when John was really squeaking. It wasn't like how he played with Miles Davis. He would play one song for about 50 minutes, sometimes an hour. I mean, he would just keep playing. I mean, that one song, keep playing. And so it wasn't fun to be there we used to, it was Money Worker Miles, or everything he played was genius. So all of us, when we got done, we'd leave the place. You know, we'd go outside to the bar across the street, everybody hang out, except Alice. There was a room, a table that musicians used to sit, was like almost in a little to the right of the stage, but it was in the back of the bandstand, so they wouldn't see anybody there because you wouldn't see anything but the back. So that was a musician's table. So every night when we'd all leave, when John would come on, she'd stay there. She saw something in that music. It was like, she told me later on that it was like a religious thing he was doing. But I saw a love affair blossom. You know, I taught Alice to play the vibes. I had 3 girl piano players in my band, and all of them. Terry Pollard was really a great. Have you ever seen that thing on YouTube with Terry Pollard and myself?
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Well, she was a great vibe player, but Alice, I taught her how to play, and she was doing good. So we had a knack. We closed our show playing it. I watched 2 people. Because John was a little shy, and Alice was very shy. I introduced each other, and I saw how every time we came off the bandstand, John would be there just to talk to her a few minutes before he came on, you know, and she'd sit and wait. I watched a love affair blossom. In fact, he came on the road a few times to visit us, and there was never any hanky-panky. He'd get his own room, she'd get hers, and I watched a love affair blossom. And then there was a place called the London House in Chicago that was the classroom of the United States. It was like the place, it was only a piano room. Oscar Peterson would play there. Nat King Cole would sing there. Errol Garner would play. It was all the great piano players would play there, you know? It was a piano room. And I got booked in there. And Alice came to me about a week before I had her, maybe a few days, 4 or 5 days, I don't remember. And she said, Terry, John wants me to go to Sweden with me. He wants to get married. And I said, wait a minute. We're opening up in 3 days. And, you know, but how do you stop a woman who falls in love? Yeah. And being such a sweetheart, you know. And the only reason, I mean, I got Walter Bishop Jr., who was one of the greatest bebop piano players also. The point was we had an act playing, no matter what we did at the beginning of the show, it didn't mean anything because at the ending, that's all. I was taught one thing years ago. Give them an opening that they'll love. Try to hit a home run on the opening, and then whatever you do in the middle, forget about it, because at the ending, your last thing, they'll remember that more than they will anything else. So when we had that vibe duet we used to play, we can get away with playing anything we wanted in the middle. But she fell in love with him, and they got married anyhow. And then, you know, Robbie Coltrane and my son Jerry were very close for a long time. They were roommates, in fact, in New York.
Now, didn't your son get Buddy Rich's drums?
Yep.
Yeah. And he didn't want to give them up, right?
Never. Are you kidding? Well, yeah, you know something? That story you have to read in the book also. Those stories are long stories, so you have to read that in the book, because I can spend 2 hours on the phone with you just talking about that. We can go through the whole book and spend a few days there.
Oh, easy. But let me kind of glean some questions from your story, and I want to know, you played with so many people over the years. Is there anybody that you didn't play with that you really wanted to play with?
I don't think so. Well, first of all, to start with, I was a kid, I wanted to play with Benny Goodman, and my idols, I told you at that time, actually my idol at that time was Joe Jones, the drummer, when I was playing drums growing up, and Count Basie, because he played with Count Basie's band, and Lester Young and Roy Eldridge. And the wildest thing, I played with them all, but the ones that I played with Benny Goodman, and Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, and Bud Powell, those guys, I played with them. So you really can't get any better. You know, that's why there's nothing I want to do that I haven't done. I'll tell you one thing that I really didn't want to tell anybody yet. You get on YouTube at all, Joe?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm not sure if you ever saw this, but my son, a year ago, I quit playing about 2 years ago. And my son, when I say quit playing, I'd go from my little office, to my living room to watch TV, and I'd pass my vibes, and I would doodle for about 5 minutes. And so my son was visiting, when Jerry was visiting, about last January. And he said, why don't we have a jam session? I said, Jerry, I'm not sure if I have the energy to play like a minute. He said, if you get tired, you'll sit down. So he brought this piano player, John Campbell, who has recorded 2 albums with me, with Buddy DeFranco, myself, and great piano player, he's worked for me out here, and a young bass player called Mike Cirillo, I think his name is. And so we jammed, and his wife, Jerry's wife, on the second tune, with your telephone today, with a little phone of yours, the iPhone, you could shoot a whole movie picture, you know.
Yeah.
So she caught the second tune and put it on Facebook. If you get a chance, look at it. It's called Terry Gibbs 91.
Okay, I will definitely do that.
And anyhow, she put that on Facebook, and overnight it got 46,000 hits.
Wow.
46,000 hits. It got over 200,000 by now. But it made those, you know, the people ask me, but come on, play something. Anyhow, the guy who Jerry's recorded, have you got any of my son's albums that he did with Ron Carter and Kenny Barron?
I don't. No, I'm going to have to get those.
Oh, some of those are some of the best albums you'll ever hear.
Yeah.
Those are Jerry's last 2 albums. He's got a new one that's coming out. But anyhow, the guy who owns his record company is a multi-millionaire in the cyber optic business, and his hobby is to have a record company. He's about 70 years old now, and he's always said to me, Terry, why don't you record for me? I've been a big fan of yours since I've been in college. I have all your records you made years ago. I got all your Dream Band. Why don't you go? I heard saw that thing on Facebook. It sounded great. It was a jam session at my house, by the way. We were not, you know how they record today, by the way, Joe? People probably don't even know. How people record today, they have all this modern electronic equipment. They want separation from everybody, you know?
Yeah.
And so people are separated by sometimes different rooms. Everybody plays with earphones, so everybody can hear each other, you know?
Yeah.
And I hate that. I mean, that's not how I like to play. I want to look in your face. I want to be right on top of you. You know, so that you get that feed off of somebody else, you know? And so when we jammed, I don't think we were a foot and a half away from each other, right on top of each other, a little space I have where my piano is. So he asked me, he wanted me to record. I said, you want me to record? He said, yeah. I said, well, I'll do a record day, but I'm not going to any studio. I'm going to do it at my house like I did. We'll do a jam session. He said, jam session? What are you going to play? No premise? No. I said, what are you asking me? I know it's a jam session. I'll ask the guys if they know how high the moon is. If they know it, they'll play it. If they don't, we'll play the blues. A jam session.
Yeah.
You make up things. You play or you find a tune. Anyhow, he was great. He paid me well, and he paid the guys for 4 days because, let's face it, when I did the thing, I was 91 years old, almost 92 years old, and we just finished it, and it's being mastered now. He paid the guys for 4 days, and if I got tired, after 3 tunes, they come back the next day, you know. We play about 3 tunes, maybe 4 tunes. And my wife bought a whole bunch of sandwiches at Costco, and we go out, sit by the pool, and we laugh and talk some more, come play some more. Anyhow, in the 4 days, we recorded 31 songs.
Wow.
I just went for one song. You know, it wasn't like a record day where you play a song, and you have it ready, and you go listen to it and come back and say, let's do this. You know, I said, look, let's do this for an ending. I'll start off here, and you come in. We just made it up before the song and then played.
Beautiful.
Not knowing what's going to come out or what's going to come out, you know? And I'll tell you, I am so happy with this album. I usually don't like to hear anything that I do till 6 months later because I remember every mistake I ever made, you know? And when you edit it yourself or when you mix it, my son is mixing it. He mixed it and there was no editing to done. You just picked the best takes, which I picked out of the 31. I found about 19 or 20 that I liked, but you have to make up 78 minutes worth of music. And so I'm really happy with the album. We got a great bunch of standards. You know, some of the hardest parts for me also, Joe, of doing this album, when I played with Benny Goodman and played with Buddy DeFranco and now with Ken Poplowski, whoever's playing a horn player, I never played a melody. I just play a part, and I just doodle underneath. So I know the melody in my head, but I don't know where it lays on my vibes. Yeah. So I was guessing where the notes would be on the melody that I played. Hey, Joe, let me tell you.
Yeah.
I am getting a little tired, so you want to ask me a few more questions about something?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I just got a couple more here. What is left for you to accomplish in your life?
Waking up tomorrow morning, every day, just waking up.
Very good. And
when you get to be 72, that's the thing to accomplish.
That's beautiful. Final question for you here. How do you want the world to remember you, the world of jazz? When we all sit back and peel back the pages of jazz history, we go over the names, we come across the great Terry Gibbs. How do you want to be remembered?
You know, it's a hard thing. I'll tell you one thing. Somebody who can write, not being a writer, you know, I'm not a writer. I just wrote my autobiography because it's very anecdotal, you know, it's all the stories. I just like to remember in a way that I've had over a few thousand people work for me. I've been a band leader since 1950, and I don't think there's one person that ever worked for me could say anything bad about me. I always try to treat all the musicians in my band like I wanted to be treated.
Yeah.
And it was always fun. Music was always fun. Music was not a job to me. It was always fun. I don't know how I really want to put it, you know.
I like it. I like that answer. That's beautiful. It's a great way to sum everything up. Terry, thank you for your time. Thank you for your enormous contribution, not only to music, but to this life. It's beautiful.
I thank you very much, Joe. I'm glad you enjoyed the book.
Happy 92nd here in about 2
happy
weeks.
Birthday. How old are you, Joe?
I'm 44.
By the way, the underwear I'm wearing is that old, but it's okay.
I love it.
All right, Joe, you
Beautiful.
take care.
Thank you, Terry. Take it easy.
All right, happy birthday.
Same to you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to a very special edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series, where we give you a bit of insight into the legends that have given us all that jazz. And thanks to Terry for his stories, his book, his graciousness, and all of that music that he's given to the world. He is a class act. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. You can go to YouTube and search for Neon Jazz as well. And for all things Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.